What is it?
Oh, so awesome. Hey, good afternoon. I'm super excited to have this conversation today. We got the amazing, super awesome Dr. Sherry Peel. And Dr. Sherry Peel is a former IRS agent with over 35 years of public and private and governmental accounting. That's like the height of nerdiness. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. She conducts workshops for various establishments, including private companies, nonprofits, churches, and she is a leading author of several books, including How to Escape the Rat Race, Four Keys to Acquire the Life of Your Dreams, and my personal favorite, I think, is How to Stick It to the IRS. So super excited to have Sherry on the phone on the show live with us today. Thank you, Sherry, for taking this time to join us and sharing some of your insights with what you got going on as well. So, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and thank you, Bush, for having me on your show.
It's a treat, right? Because it's March, end of March. Everyone's scrambling to kind of figure out the whole tax situation and trying to figure out extensions, whether I'm getting money back, whether I have to pay. They're nervous, right? Every time you deal with a three-letter agency, different bells go off, and we all feel a little nervous with that. So super excited to get some of your insights today and some of the things that you've been working on, and hopefully you get to share some of the secrets with us and kind of let us know if we're on the right track to doing some things as well. So we'll get started. Sherry, can I call you Sherry? Should I
Yes,
address you as Dr. Sherry?
Sherry. I'm Sherry. Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sherry, tell us about the transition from working with the IRS to becoming a champion for financial literacy and empowerment.
Oh, that's like from evolution to revolution is what you want. I got my CPA, and I was determined that I was going to be a CPA because that's what I looked at when I was in high school. My dad said, "When you're 18, you're getting out," and so I was scared. It's like, what am I going to do? So I looked at all kind of professions, and I said, "Okay, I'm pretty good in math. Let's go get a CPA." So I did that. I went into a CPA firm. I It was okay, but then I started traveling, and they weren't taking me to places like New York and LA. They were having me go do audits in Podunk, Mississippi, and Kakalaki, South Carolina. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So my dad always taught me that if I don't like where I am at point A, do not complain. Go to point B. So I quit there and I went into corporate America. Well, corporate America is a different animal. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know and what you do with who you know. And I wasn't about that life. So I didn't last long there. I went to the IRS. I actually looked up an ad in the Atlanta Journal Constitution, and I went and interviewed, got hired on the spot, and I became an internal revenue agent. Thought I was doing my duty to the country,
Sure, sure.
the taxes and all that. And I'm pretty good at doing well. I have a spirit of excellence about me, always have. So I moved up in rank very quickly, got promoted very quickly, got all kind of awards and plaques and monetary awards. And after about 6 years, I started seeing things like, okay, so I'm auditing these little mom and pop companies, and they
Right.
love what they do. And when you're talking to them, they're telling you all about their business, but they've done some things wrong. And when you hand them an audit report and they're owed 20, 30, $40,000, that's devastating. And they don't have an attorney to go and fight for them. And regardless of whether the IRS is wrong or not, they don't know. But then the corporations, you hand them a bill for $200,000, and they've got these CPAs and attorneys that are
Right.
fighting for them, and then they'll go up against the IRS attorneys, and literally, Bush, they make deals. They make deals. I heard about one deal where the company owed a whole bunch of money, and the IRS agent got with the IRS attorney got with the attorney for the company and said, "Hey, you know what? We can handle this, on the side right here if you get me a date with the secretary on the second floor with the big breasts." I am not joking with you. These things happen. So
No,
yeah,
no.
no, I'm not joking. So these things happen. Mom and pop were getting shafted, and the corporations get away with stuff. And also, I'm one of those real hardline Christians, and I saw that as I moved up in rank, my family started getting, the short end of the stick. I had two small children at the time, and me fighting with attorneys and CPAs all day, I would get home with this headache. You know,
Right.
cartoons or like that. And then I would just slap some peanut butter and jelly on bread and give them some milk. And they didn't know any different. They loved it, but I knew it was wrong. So I eventually quit the job. I didn't have another job. I just quit. And since I was already a CPA, I just decided that I was going to be June Cleaver and stay home. Saved up a whole bunch of money, stayed home for a year. That didn't work out because I'm just not that kind of homebody person. So I
Yeah.
hung my shackle out and started my CPA firm. Which this is when people started coming to me because they were scared of me when I was at the IRS and say, "Hey, you know what? I've heard that we're not even supposed to be paying income taxes. I heard that the whole thing is a fraud, and they were supposed to collect taxes during World War II, and then they kept taking our money." All these things I've been hearing, and I'm just chugging along with my CPA firm and putting that on the back burner. Well, I started working with churches because that was one of my specialties.
Sure.
One of the pastors came to me and said, "There's this lady at my church, and she has all this information that she's telling me, and I want you to talk to her." So this pastor was my client. I said, "Okay, I'll talk to the lady." Lady called me and she water hosed me down with all this information that she heard about the income tax and that we weren't liable for the tax and all this. And she took, I listened to her, of course. And about 2 weeks later, she called me, and this was in summer of 2020. And she said, "Miss Jackson, all that stuff I told you, it's in the USA Today. Go get a USA Today." So I went and found a newspaper stand and got the USA Today. And sure enough, I opened it. There was an ad in the back and it said, "Dear We the People, the income tax is a fraud." And I'm like, really? So I read the article and there were two things that stuck out. One was that there was a reward from a guy named Bill Conklin. William Conklin had a $50,000 reward or challenge in there for anybody that could prove that most Americans that live and work in the 50 states had to file an income tax return and pay an income tax. And I was like, that's peculiar. But the other thing that caught my eye was there was a former IRS criminal investigation division agent named Joe Bannister that had written a book that said basically he was researching the tax because he had heard these things about the income tax, and he took
Sure.
2.5 years of his life and researched and found that it's not something that we should be doing. He took it to his superiors and they told him, either you resign or, or else. We're not going to answer your question. So I said, "Oh," got in touch with Joe, and then I became part of what's called the tax honesty movement. And that's when all of the rebellion started. A lot of other stuff behind that. Ed Griffin's book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. I read that book and I was like, okay, so the income tax doesn't go towards running the country. It goes to the Federal Reserve, which is a non-auditable private banking cartel that,
Yeah.
that thousands and thousands of dollars per person in interest from the American people. And I was like, "Oh no, this is slavery all again." It's not just about black people. It's black, white, green, blue, pink, and purple polka dots.
Brown.
Everybody is a slave now. It's like, "Oh, they're stealing our money." I started doing a lot of research, and then one of the Federal Reserve chairmen from 1937, Beardsley Rummer was his name. He wrote a treatise called "Income Tax for Revenue is Obsolete," and in there it says income taxes aren't needed to run the country. It's for redistribution of wealth. And so I got all mad and I got that back snapping, head like I'm not paying any more taxes.
Right.
And I started going out on the speaking circuit, and I wasn't telling people what to do. I didn't tell people to file or not to file. I didn't tell them to pay or not to pay. I just told them to do your own research, do your due diligence, and decide whether you are going to be a slave or get off the plantation. And that ruffled the feathers of the government, along with the others in the movement. It ruffled their feathers, so they came after us.
Well, that's why we call the Unfiltered Show, because we just got a whole nugget of secrets in that conversation that we're going to have to replay, and we're going to have to make sure we get some notes on that. So I want to pick up on that. So thank you for sharing that, Sherry. We talked at the very beginning of that about is there a bullying aspect to small business owners compared to deal striking with large corporations?
Of course, they call the smaller businesses the low hanging fruit. Lazy people aren't going to climb up in the tree. They're going to pick the low hanging fruit. So they'll
Yeah.
pick people and they'll audit them. And if they find that the person didn't do it right, they'll audit all the years that are open, all of them that where the statute hasn't expired. But then
Yeah.
the IRS is scared to go after these larger companies because they have CPAs and attorneys fighting from them. I was already a CPA, and that's part of the reason why I moved up, because I was able to, clap back when an
Right.
attorney.
Go toe to toe with them.
Yeah, there is bullying of these people, and unfortunately, It's been going on for decades.
So I have a question for you. I have interviewed some people in the past, and I've had some people that I've met that have all had run-ins with the IRS. Some of them actually had to go in and face. I don't know if the right word is criminal charges, but certainly prison sentences for doing some of that. And you always find out that it's the smaller fish that gets fried, while it just seems like the big guys all seem to skate through and without even a slap on the wrist. How do we prevent this from being a systemic issue, and all that we've seen in the news, in the media, and for what used to be called a newspaper? How do we differentiate what's bullying and what's fair?
None of it's fair. None of it's fair.
Yeah,
Taking I have a poster in my office, and it says this:
I
if
want to hear this.
if stealing 100% of the product of someone's labor is slavery, at what percentage is it not slavery? So this is slavery. And we existed for centuries without taxes. And my name for the IRS is the insidious representatives of Satan, because they take money from us and they
Yep.
give it to people who are in other countries, and they do things with it that we do not agree with. So I know that people are fearful. I know that there are people out there that say, don't file, don't file, but they're scared to go to jail. And the people that stand up against them, they're not enough of them. So they slap us all down. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but me and others were prosecuted because we weren't filing tax returns.
Wow.
We were practicing what we preached. Now, some of us did get good lawyers and good juries that weren't afraid of the IRS. But when I came along, too many people had already won. And they sent people down from Washington, D.C. to Atlanta, Georgia to
Wow.
prosecute me on a misdemeanor charge, not even felony, misdemeanor charge. And I had my lawyer. I wanted him to ask the jury this question: would you be afraid to acquit Miss Jackson for fear of the IRS coming after you? Judge would not let my attorney at it was a three-ring circus. Those people were fearful of the IRS. The judge kept shutting me down when I started talking about the Supreme Court cases that say that income is corporate profit. So let me go in on a rabbit trail right there. When
Please.
you and I make an agreement, I'm going to cut your grass and you're going to give me $100 bill. That's an
Okay.
agreement. Constitution says we can make contracts. I use my brain, my arms, and my legs to cut your grass. I use my life force to cut your grass in exchange for $100 bill so I can go buy some food for my family.
Right.
That's
Contract for service.
that's not income. That's an exchange. So let's flip it over and say the smallest Walmart in the USA yesterday brought in $100,000.
Okay.
But they have rent on the building, they have salaries, they have to pay electricity, they have
Right.
to pay
Insurance.
insurance, all of that stuff. And from $100,000, they netted $40,000.
Okay.
They pay tax on the $40,000. We pay tax on the whole 100. And that's wrong on so many different levels. So it's all wrong. Income is corporate profits, and that's been proven. However, the greed of the government and the systems that are in place, just like I said earlier, the after World War II, and they were taking the money out for the war, they said, hey, we like this, and they kept taking the money. And if you complain about it, if you decide to keep your money, there are not enough people that have said enough is enough, and they'll go after you. So I got a 4-year sentence on a
No.
charge. Yes, I did. And I literally spent 3 years in a federal prison for standing up for my right to keep what I earned, because it's not theirs, it's ours. And so the reason why it was 3 years instead of four, they had to give me 6 months good time, and they had to give me 6 months halfway house. They had to do it. But they let me out 3 years to the day, no sooner, because I was a force to be reckoned with. Now think about this, Butch. The income tax is a racially unifying issue because it's hitting all of us.
For sure.
They want us all divided. I'm black, you're white, I'm
I'm
Jewish,
Brown.
all of that stuff. I'm a Democrat. They want us all divided because divide and conquer has worked for forever. And so this was bringing people together, me and others. We were having rallies. I was speaking just about every weekend, and they're like, no. Then um Aaron Russo, he is a movie producer that made Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. and the Rose with Bette Midler. He got upset with the IRS and he decided to do a documentary, and it's called America from Freedom to Fascism. And it's still out there on YouTube, but he flew us all out to Hollywood. We did our little parts, and the movie blew up for about a week, and they shut it down from the theaters. They said the lines were around the corner, but they I guess somehow the government convinced the theaters, the major theaters, not to show the movie. Then it moved to smaller theaters, and then it moved to, buying it on a CD. But it's out there on YouTube. But it basically is me and others. There's other former IRS agents. There's Ed Griffin, historians, businessmen who stopped taking payroll taxes from their workers because they knew that taking that money was wrong. All of these people in this documentary. And then they started going after us after that. And yeah, I spent 3 years in prison. And
Sherry, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's the height of three-letter agency bullying right there, and I'm really sorry to hear that. And I know nothing can make up for that time. Um, and it's unfortunate that the judicial system um, failed to do diligence by you or protect the people as they're supposed to. Sounds like you had for lack of a better word, a lazy judge, or somebody that was, had his strings pulled by an organization. But was it even a fair fight to begin with?
oh, no, 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 because every time I brought up Tommy Cryer was a lawyer in Shreveport, Louisiana, had not
Yeah,
filed tax returns in 10 years. He had his case 3 months before mine. He stood up there with a 109-page document called the memorandum, and read off all the Supreme Court cases that said that income is corporate profits and we're not liable. He was acquitted. Every time I had
identical charges.
identical charges. I could not, she would not, it was a woman judge. She would not let me, when I started rattling off the cases, I will instruct the jury on the law. She would not let me. So basically, let's say football, when a winning football team starts losing, they're lost. They'll go on Monday and look at the drawing board in the locker room and figure out what they did wrong. Everything that they did with other people that were acquitted, they made sure I couldn't do.
But there was precedence.
Yeah, but not no. It's precedence when they win. When you win,
Wow.
a lot of those cases aren't even made public. So, I am one that believes that, there's not a coincidence. There are a lot of reasons why
Sure.
I lost the case, and we won't get into that now. But suffice it to
Sure.
say that if they thought they were going to shut me up, it did not work because, a
I
friend
love it.
wrote a book called How to Stick It to the IRS, and my
Let's,
mentor said, you just, what are you doing? You got the balls to write a book called How to Stick It to the IRS. And I said, they stuck it to me, I'm gonna stick it right back to them. So
I love that. I love that. I love that. That's so gangster. I absolutely love it. Right. I've been up against the agency twice, and both times it was unfounded, all in my favor. No challenge there. But one time they camped out in my office for 3 days, made everybody nervous. They made it look like we were gonna, they were gonna uncover a whole lot of things that just weren't there. And 3 days later, they packed up, left, and but the arrogance of that whole event, the audacious mindset that they have all the liberties and rights to pretty much set the rules, do whatever they want, and we would have to comply. Now, conditioning has told us that's true, even though otherwise, and you're going to explain today. But all through our adult life, we were raised to believe that you don't fight City Hall, number one. Number two, you don't go up against three-letter agencies. And number three, you just try never to get on their radar. So how does that play into some of what you've experienced and some of what you know today?
so much, so much. And you left out the most important one that was ingrained in us even before our adulthood. There's nothing sure in life but
Taxes and death.
death and taxes. That's not true. But these slogans were made up by
Sherry, say that again one more time. We need to hear it just to remember it.
there's nothing sure, but death and taxes is not true. It's ours, not theirs. There were spin doctors back in the 30s, and they made they made those phrases up so that people could be fearful. I mean,
Yeah,
when you earn
it works.
it does work. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
we've become, jellyfish. There was about what was this country founded on, Butch?
Yeah.
Taxation without representation. What was the
Right.
Tea Party all about? If we're gonna,
Right.
you cannot comply your way out of tyranny.
We've come so far from that, haven't we?
Yes, we have. And unfortunately, people have gotten comfortable. And this was all by design. I've got my cushy job and I've got my cushy car and my pension and all that. And I'm not going to fight. Most of the people that I talked to, or, the conversation came up, this is the consensus of what they said to me. I don't care what the law says. I care what the IRS can do to me.
Yeah.
So, at some point or another, you just, leave those people behind and continue to go on and do the things that you need to do. And that it's not just the IRS. That was just one of the rabbit holes. Our healthcare system or lack of healthcare system is another one. And there's so many. But as far as the IRS is concerned, there's tax evasion as far as they're concerned, and there's tax avoidance. I started looking at wealthy people. They don't pay taxes. What
Sure.
did they do? Leona Helmsley a long time ago said
Yeah.
only the little people pay taxes, and she was absolutely right, because the tax code that they've written, even though illegal in my opinion, is written for businesses. That's why all of these people that are in Washington now and the ones that just got out of Washington don't pay taxes.
Sherry, let me ask you a question. This is Unfiltered, and you've shared something very personal in the last few minutes, and I appreciate you for that. So I'm gonna share something back as well. I've gone up against three-letter agencies twice in my professional life, and in both times, right, it was a lot of it's unfounded, and a lot of it was never justified, and there was a lot of bullying going on. But here's the challenge: they got the deepest pockets. So at some point, they can bleed anyone dry just by lengthening out or stretching out the game. No one's got that kind of endurance to last them dollar for dollar. So how do we find that happy place where you're getting bullied, but you also know it's a losing battle?
Right. So 99% of the people aren't going to fight them. And I don't suggest it. In the time that I was doing that, I knew I was right. But right now, as I'm telling people,
Yeah.
instead of trying to cut the head off the beast like I did, let's starve the beast. So my motto is starve the beast. Yes, go ahead and stay within the system, but you have to be able to write off everything but the kitchen sink. And in order to do that,
Right.
you have to have a business. Employees do not have deductions, especially anymore. They used to have at least the employee expenses, but they don't even have that anymore. If you're working for somebody, which they want
Sitting
you to
duck.
do, exactly, you're sitting duck. You get a W
Yeah.
2. They take money from you during the year. Like I
Yeah.
have somebody's W 2 right here on my desk. I don't file taxes, but I'm looking at somebody's W 2, and they made $115,000. The IRS took $17,000 from this person, and
Yeah.
they thought they were going to get a refund. And when I tried to help them, they're trying to decide whether they're going to do married filing separate or married joint. They're getting $342 back. So
Yeah.
where's all
So
the
they're
money?
getting taxed on the whole $100 for landscaping.
Exactly. And so, in order to avoid that, I'm teaching people. I have a system, and it's called the KPG system. Keep what you earn, protect what you earn, and grow what you earn. And the major part of this system is, well, there are several parts of it, but the part that we're talking about right now, you got to have a home-based business. You can't write off your cell phone
For
as
sure.
an employee, but you can with the business. You can't write off your internet as an employee, but you can with the business. You can't write off when you're driving around your mileage. You can't write that off as an employee, but you can with the business, and so on and so on.
Right. You
These
got to have
business
a side hustle, right?
Exactly. It could even turn out to be your main hustle. A lot of people, 86% of the people in this country don't like their jobs. So
Right.
how about going and starting something, being diligent about it, making sure it's something profitable, and then after some years, then you can decide whether you want to keep the job or you want to leave. I have an associate named Norm. He started his home-based business. He worked it for 3 years to make sure that it wasn't a fluke. He was consistently making
Right.
money. He was still on his job. They had a Christmas party. He came into the Christmas party dressed like Santa, had a big old bag, and he was giving out his coworkers gifts. Gave his boss a gift and said, "I'm sorry, I have to fire you. I won't be coming back in January." And
Wonderful.
business was working. I love it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that too. That's that's powerful. You talked about 86% of the people in this country that hate their jobs. The other 14% work for the IRS. So,
Yeah.
so let's talk about this book. This, the insights from the book, How to Stick It to the IRS, Confessions from a Former Insider. That had got to have gotten some attention from both sides of the fence, right?
Yes, they wanted to see what was in the book. Now that book is more about how to avoid audits than anything.
Sure.
And we can talk about and actually in that book, because that's not my first book, but in that book, I had my tax attorney, the one who helps me out, write a chapter. So after I got out of prison, which I don't know if you believe this or not, because first they came and gave me a
I'm
300.
still wrapping my head around them sending you away for three
Yeah,
years
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
something. Yeah,
For that, but when you're vocal like me, and when people are listening to you, and you have 9 letters behind your name,
yeah,
you make people start to think, and they don't want people to think. We're not supposed to think. We're supposed to be workers. That's what John D. Rockefeller said. I don't want thinkers. I want workers. At any rate, they sent me a $386,000 tax bill because during the time that I wasn't filing, I was a six-figure earner and I wasn't filing. So I said to myself, how is it that they can? This is double jeopardy. They just put me in jail. That's like drowning somebody and then pulling them up out of the water and hanging them. So I got a new attorney, and he talked me into doing what's called an offering compromise. I had just gotten out of prison. I said, I'm coming back to the top. So let's do this. So I had to file the tax returns. I got the tax down to $50,000, 51,000, because I had my receipts and I was good. I was deduction queen when I was doing taxes, when I
sure.
was preparing tax return. But then they put the fraud penalty on me and this penalty and that went up to 185K. The law firm, the McPherson Group. By the way, the McPherson Group, their website is beatirs.com. They did the
They're not
offering.
messing around.
No, they're not. No, Mac, his father and 3 sons. Mac was a Green Beret in the Vietnam War, and when he came back, he said he had to find something to fight, so he chose the IRS. So anyway, they did the offering compromise, and sure enough, I ended up having to pay $1,000. But the fact that they go after you and
What
then
was the original bill?
the original one was 386,000, and then when I actually did the tax returns, they accepted the returns, but they put all those penalties on there for all those years, and it was up to 185. So it went from 386 to 185 to 1,000, and
To $1,000.
because I didn't have anything. I had no house. I had turned the house,
Yeah, but what if people didn't have your knowledge, your expertise, your experience? What would happen then?
and they would be slaves to a payment plan.
For how long? For the rest of the natural life?
Because the penalties on top of interest on top of penalties on top of interest. It's not like simple interest when you have a car note or anything like that. It's penalties. They continue to add up. The interest continues to add up, and you're a slave for life to the IRS. That's why I call them the insidious representatives of Satan.
Say that. Say that one more time. That's precious.
The insidious representatives of Satan, IRS.
So, you know, so so Sherry, obviously, I know you have a book out. I know you're a crusader. I know it's a ministry for you, but not everybody has access to this. And for the most part, most people don't know where to go with this, or they even think it's out of their control. So, for somebody else in this country, as you were going through that from 386 to 183 to $1,000, um, people would have checked out at 386. Some people may have got lucky and got down to 187, but I would say this: out of 100 people, maybe one person, that's you, that got it down to $1,000. For anybody else, 186 or 387 would clean them out for life,
Yes,
legacy life.
that is true. But I don't. I'm not a fearful person. I mean, I grew up partially in Detroit. I was born in Detroit. You know,
Yeah.
Detroit, and so my father taught me not to be fearful. And so I was like, okay, I used to be one of them. I know who they are. I know how they act. And I knew that they couldn't take stuff from me. I don't even care about stuff. And they heard me when I was speaking at all these events. They would send people in. I know they had people call me and desperately ask me to tell them what to do about tell them, husband and wife. And the wife wants to file and the husband doesn't. And they're pleading with me, please tell her, that I'm right and that we shouldn't file. And I know you're an agent. I know you're a spy because nobody asked me stuff like that.
Wow.
But these things, it's amazing how the government wants to continue in all kinds of different areas, perpetuating it. Because think about it, if they don't have our money, they don't have power.
So, okay, you talk about starving the beast. And the way to do that, obviously, is each of us have an individual part responsibility to minimize any exposure we would have, and to find all the legitimate deductions and everything else. Open up a side business, or diversify our portfolios. Um, not everybody. The mass majority of this country are on this hamster wheel. They don't have access to this, right? They're not going to conferences and seminars that you're speaking at. They don't have knowledge to know these things exist. So is that what's going on then? The herd mentality is just following the mainstream.
The system keeps people busy. They keep people busy with work. They keep people busy with the lamestream media. You wake up, your alarm goes off, death, murder, fire, all of this, and you wake up, stressed out because you just heard that this person, seven people were killed, all this other stuff. And then you
Sure.
come home at night and you get in front of that electronic income reducer that I call the TV, or the electronic intellect reducer, both of those, and then you listen to more of it. And then now we have the internet, and there's great stuff on the internet, but sitting there for 2 hours watching people's cats run around, and dogs run around, and all this other stuff that people are doing, this is a distraction. Keeping us busy is a distraction. So when people break free of that matrix, they see, oh, you know what, as opposed to me watching the football game and making, I don't know who plays football. What's some football players' names? I don't know them. Cam Newton. He doesn't even play
Right.
football. But I'm not going to sit there, and Cam Newton's not writing me a check. My team is the Jackson team.
Right.
These the television shows. I don't have TV, which I have a television in there, but I have Netflix for my granddaughter's little shows, and I watch documentaries, and I like the ones about nature and stuff.
Sure.
We don't have time for that. My mentor says, if you're not making at least $10,000 a month, you should be watching TV anyway. But we waste our time doing this, and we're making other people rich while we're sitting there being complacent, and we're in a comfort zone, and life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So the people that want to leave the comfort zone and come along and learn and do what the wealthy are doing, those are the people that are in my tribe. Those are my clients. They say, enough is enough. I do have a job. I want to work myself out of a job, or I want to keep the job, but instead of just you know vegging out in front of the television, when I get home, I'm going to decompress. I'm going to spend some time with my family, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna work in the evenings on my business, and I'm going to work on the weekends in my business. I'm not sitting there watching all the football games for the whole Saturday, for the, I think it's for the college, and then for the Sunday, I'm not doing that. And so those
Right.
are people that are going to make it, Butch, and the other ones, they're just going to continue to be proletarians for the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and his sidekick Yuval Harari that calls us useless eaters.
Right.
It's going to come true because they're not paying attention.
Unbelievable. This is awesome. This is the best, this is the best news we could get today. Now, talk a little bit. So you've consulted and you have clients, and they come to you from all walks of life. So talk about the imbalance of conditioning, right? Husband and wife in a real situation. Husband grows up, and the wife grows up, and she's listening to you and she's thinking, man, Dr. Peel knows what she's doing. Dr. Sherry, I mean, she knows what she's talking about, and I'm excited to learn these things, and I want to go down this path. And then the husband came from this completely conservative household. And when I say conservative, I don't mean politically, but I just mean the beige families that stayed within the box, right? They stayed within the lines their entire life. So dad and grandpa and great grandpa, they all said the same things. So he's growing up thinking, no, you got to pay your taxes, you got to do these things, you got to follow the rules. And then there's this power struggle. And meanwhile, you're sitting there watching them as a consultant, watching them spiral, knowing that there's no winner in this argument.
I have had that situation. Now, first of all, mostly it's the men who have done the research and it's the wives that are scared. But I have had the instance where the woman wanted to branch out and do some things that were, unconventional and out of the box, and the husband said no. I am a hardline Christian.
Yeah.
I believe that the man is the head of the household. And I said to her,
Wow.
scale it back, listen to your husband and pray. Because at some point or another, instead of bullying up on him and telling him all this is wrong and you all losing this money, just pray. That's all you can do. And go ahead and try to find ways to reduce the taxes. There's a lot of ways that you can reduce your income taxes. You can start a little side business and all these things, but don't just buck up and say, I'm not filing taxes anymore. No, that's not, you're not the head of the household. That's just who I am. I believe in the Bible.
That's from okay.
And
So it's
make,
biblical, family, cultural
mhm,
upbringing,
mhm,
right? Um, allowing the man to be the man in those situations, as long as he's willing to also do the job to lead, right?
right.
It's not just a title; it's a responsibility.
It is a responsibility.
Yeah,
And
and I've learned that as well. So um, I have to ask you a question, and this is based solely on the conversations that we've had for the last 35 minutes.
okay.
How are you so calm, having gone through what you've gone through, seeing what you've seen, being in the space for 35 years, um, watching this blatant disregard for livelihoods happen all around you, and then being hung out to be the scapegoat, um, to try to prevent future people from speaking out and speaking the truth. How are you so calm through all of this?
My
I'd be outraged. You
well,
know, yeah, I'd be outraged. I'd be on some overpass somewhere throwing Coke bottles at cars passing by. I mean, yeah,
I do get angry sometimes, but the Lord is in control of everything. Butch, I'm not running anything but my mouth. And I realized that a long time ago as a Christian when I went into the prison. I was like, I've been walking this walk and talking the talk. Now it's really time to do it. So I focus my energies on what needs to be done and not what happened in the past. I'm really good at transmuting my energy towards something positive because when something negative happened, I really got upset about the Hunter Biden thing. Hunter Biden was doing everything under the sun and he got a pardon. And here I am, a homeschooling mother.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well, your dad wasn't president.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And so it's like, okay, so no, there's no equality in this, but
it's not just one pardon. The entire family got pardoned for past and future.
past and future. How
Right.
can in Fauci? It's like how can you do a preemptive pardon for somebody? And I did get upset for a little while, but it's like, you know what? Be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever man sowed, that shall he also reap. And there's nothing I can do about it, but something will be done about it. And let me go ahead and do what my purpose is. My purpose is to help people, the underdogs, keep, protect, and grow what they earn so that they can leave a legacy. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Kennedy Foundation, we can do those things if we pay attention. We turn off the television and start paying attention. How can I keep this house? Every
Yeah.
time, the wealthy people, they give their children houses, they build houses for them, they leave these legacies, and
Yeah.
we're just leaving bills. So how
Yeah.
do I teach the people? How do I wake the people enough to know that they can do these things too? It's not impossible, but you have to come out of your comfort zone. You have to.
So you can also lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So,
I can make it drink. You give it salt, and that's what I do.
oh,
You give it enough salt, it will go find the drink.
I love that. So I love that. So, but you're also going against life conditioning. We're like, we talked about, right? There are no guarantees in life except for death and taxes. We all heard that. Not only we hear it, we heard it from people we love, trust, and admire. We
Mhm.
heard it from people we respect. We heard it from people who may have even had success. So, money doesn't grow on trees. Money's the root of all evil. I mean, it's all these adages we've heard from people that have loved us, nurtured us, protected us our whole lives. Could be our mothers, could be our aunts. So now I'm meeting Dr. Sherry Peel, and she's saying, listen, I want you to think different, feel different, be different, act different, walk different. And I'm going, wait a second, my inner being is fighting this because I love you, I know you, I respect you, but would my mom have steered me wrong? Would my grandfather have given me bad advice? How do we battle with that? And how do you help me put the salt so I get thirsty?
Yeah, people don't know what they don't know. They meant well. All of them meant well. The money don't grow on trees, and there's no
Yeah,
get rich quick scheme. There are no get rich slow schemes. If you save all your life, you are never going to be rich.
I love
So
that. Yeah.
figure something out that's going to make you rich. There's so many things out there that I teach my clients to be able to have multiple streams of income. They were wrong. They were sincere, but they were sincerely wrong. So either you want to stick with that and stay in the past and stay in your comfort zone, or you want to step outside of the box, which I don't even know what a box is anymore, and do the things that are going to make your family thrive.
Your second book, How to Escape the Rat Race. Well, I don't know if that's chronologically your second book, but the book, How to Escape the Rat Race, that addresses breaking out of that mold, right? That addresses becoming an independent thinker, being entrepreneurial, looking at different ways to change the legacy cycle of wash, rinse, and repeat, passing on debt, like you said, from generation to generation. So I'm gonna ask you a somewhat of a loaded question. I, worked in financial services for many years, and I was really good at this. And after a while, coming from a different country, I learned to profile certain um, demographics, and I learned to talk different to different groups, right? So there was some, for example, culturally, they measured their success based on their parents. So if they were doing better for their kids, they felt they were better than their parents, and therefore they didn't need to strive any further. And then there was some that forever who felt that it wouldn't matter how hard we worked, we're not meant to succeed. It doesn't happen to people like us. Plenty of victim mentality going around, right? So then I get to meet Dr. Sherry Peel, and I was already impressed with you at the conference when we met, and I learned so much just from that interaction, and then having to see how your peers regarded you. Find out today that you carried some pretty significant crosses, um, knelt down at many stations, got scourged publicly, dealt with abandonment from even maybe some of people in your camp, and you come out thriving and blossoming and feeling even more compassionate for the fellow man than before. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't equate. For a small mind like myself, it doesn't equate. How are you managing all of that with such grace?
My father, which is still alive, he's 81. He'll be 82 next month.
Still in Detroit?
No, actually, we moved here. He moved here
Perfect.
out of Detroit when he saw Detroit going down. So he moved to
Okay.
Atlanta, and he's here. He's maybe about 30 miles from me. My
Perfect.
mom's maybe about 10 miles from me, and I'm an only child. But
Perfect.
my dad used to always say, "Keep getting up." And as I, maybe within the last 5 years, I found out that that came from my grandfather. So no matter how many times I get knocked down, I don't get the victim, oh, woe is me. No, just keep getting up because I know who I am. And so I take the knowledge that I have. They couldn't take the knowledge from me. So I can still use the knowledge that I have. I don't have as many letters behind my name anymore. I did go get a master's degree and a doctor's degree after I got out of prison. But I just keep getting up and I know that I have a purpose. When you know your purpose, you don't let stuff like that, keep you down for long. You just let it roll off and God's got me. He's got a plan for me and I'll just continue to carry it out.
So, Sherry, I've always been an outside the box thinker, always push the envelope. I'm not a black and white. I operate always in the gray, right? And when I had my run-ins with the three-letter agencies, I had a bunch of people around me give me the whole "I told you so." I knew it was going to happen. I knew you were playing too close to the fire. A lot of people came out and started to preach to me why I was sloppy, made mistakes, whatever the case might be. Um, and today I say to all of them, to hell with them, because none of them are around in my life anymore, right? They were all there when things were going well. I had plenty of fair-weathered friends. I had my best friends in life walk out on me when they treated me like OJ a little bit, even though I wasn't proven guilty. They kind of just made their own assumptions, right? So you're dealing with some of this controversial, right? Going against the IRS, taking on the tax code, or all these fictitious books that they have. I learned something at the conference that really blew my mind. The tax code is the least defined book in all of government, right? And yet they operate with such liberties to do whatever they want. So when you're dealing with some of that, and dealing with the abandonment, how do you find that level of acceptance, grace, forgiveness to still feel as passionate as you do right now? Because your books are written for people to not experience what you've experienced.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of rejection. My family stood by me. My friends stood by me. There are only maybe one or two people that I don't talk to anymore, that they don't talk to me, that they kind of just abandoned me, but
Yeah.
everybody stayed there. And this is what the judge said at the sentencing, because the sentencing, after the conviction, that trial was 3 days. At the end of that 3 days, when those people came back with
In three
four
days, they decided your fate for 3 years.
30 minutes. They deliberated for 30 minutes because they were so fearful. Because, and also because I didn't get to the chance to, you know,
Right. Feel
point
the
my,
argument.
he kept
Yeah.
shutting me down. But then when they came back with the 4 counts of guilty, because it was 4 years where I was making 6 figures that they didn't that I didn't file, the judge got up and walked off. She didn't say a word. When they said that, she walked off. Everybody said, "This is strange." She never said anything. But during the sentencing, the prosecution decided that they wanted to give me more time. So the guideline said 24 months or 36 months. They wanted to give me 48 months because I was such a force with the taxes. And when she sentenced me, and I'm gonna use, she was a Southern white woman. I'm gonna use her voice and tell you what she said and what the significance of it was. I know you homeschool your children, Miss Jackson, and I know you got a lot of family support, but you can't run around the country telling people not to file income tax returns. And I looked her dead in the eye and I said, I've never done that. I never told people what to, I didn't. I just looked at her and said, I never done that. Because I didn't
Right.
do that, but it wasn't about the fact that I kept what I earned. It was about the fact that I was educating people on what the income tax does, what it is, and how it makes us continue to be the slaves to the system. So it doesn't, truth is truth for everybody, or it's not truth at all. So either
Ma-
you want to hear the truth or you want to stay over there. And I just don't have that kind of time for those kind of people anymore. I'm 62 years old. I don't have time to be fooling around.
You think the judge was defending her truth or she was trying to validate her life?
I think that she was all of them are in cahoots together. I mean, our system is a failure because
Right.
all of them are in
They want to
cahoots.
stay reelected.
She knew what she needed to do. She needed to make sure that I didn't say anything that was going to convince the already scared jury that
Yeah.
there might be some credibility to what she's saying.
And selling out these days makes sense. If I had a job in Hollywood, I'd stand on a pedestal and I'd be as liberal as everybody else, and I'd support all the liberal agendas because it gets me in movies, it keeps me employed, and I can go live my private life. You watch guys like Mark Cuban on TV. Mark Cuban says this one day and that another day. Mark Cuban's a businessman. He's a marketer. What he's doing is promoting an agenda. Doesn't have to be his agenda.
Right.
It's a agenda, right? And it's working. So I totally get it. And all those in government right now, I mean, when I went up against the three-letter agencies, I will say this: there was so little regard for the truth. There was plenty of attention to what would fit their already preconceived narrative. And they were looking to fill in the blanks. So if you went outside the lines and spoke the truth, you could see how disinterested all parties were.
Yes.
And I just want to pick up on something you just said. You talked about not being abandoned by your community and your family. I would submit that my family certainly never abandoned me throughout the entire process, not even one person, but 99% of my community did. The 1 or 2% that didn't are still in my tribe and in my community today, and we have thrived ever since. So, I now use it as a filter more than I am, anything that holds me back, right? I almost want to put it out there, just like I'm doing on this show, and maybe you have as well. I'm almost wanting to say, listen, you bring it, right? Whatever you got, I've done it. Whatever has hurt you, I've taken those bullets, and I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still kicking. So thank you for being so blatantly giving me permission to being unfiltered. I host this show, and I forget that it's okay, right? It is okay. And but let me ask you, and this is going to be completely loaded because of all the experience you've had. If I gave you a magic wand, and I ask this every week to my guests on the show, if I gave you a magic wand and let you go back 3, 5, 10 years in time, um, and change, do over, erase, do different, anything in life, except for spouses and kids, right? Because we got to keep those. Um, well, at least the kids. We got to at least keep kids. I don't want you on air to talk about anything else, but yeah, we got to keep our kids or grandkids. What would you do different, if any?
The thing that I think of right now is if I would have managed my money differently.
Okay.
You were talking about back before then, I would have managed my money differently. There are some things that I didn't know. Hindsight is an exact science. And if I had known back then what I know now, all the money that I was making back then in the let's say in the 90s, early 2000s, I would have definitely invested more and invested it differently.
Okay.
At this point in my life, I don't want to um I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm, broke and not being able to pay my bills. And I'm not there, but
Yeah.
I want to be I wish I was a little bit more, because people listen to you more the more you have. If you have $1 million house, people are going to be listening to you. It's like, okay, they've made it. And I'm so frugal that I'm not going out and get $1 million house. I used to do the seminars in my basement until I realized that people had a disconnect. They were hearing my knowledge and stuff, but then they looked at where I lived, and it's like, so I started doing them at hotels, and then things started to pick up because you couldn't
Right.
see that I live in what I can afford. I'm not going to be out there getting a house that this world, and especially in this country, is so uncertain. But this is how I live. I wish that I had invested differently. Now I did, my marriage did end after the after I got home. There was some stuff that went on when I was gone and all of
Sure.
that. So I'm not married. Um that I wish, at some point I want to be married again, but that's another story. But that whole situation with the court case and all of that, I didn't like the way it turned out. I would have probably done some things differently as far as what I said and how I handled it, and maybe picked a different lawyer. I would have picked a different lawyer. But there are
And a
lessons.
different judge.
Yeah, well, not even that. It's like there's some things that I could have done to avoid it that I didn't know about. So,
Yeah.
but the experience that I got when I was in prison. See, I was one of those goody two shoes all my life. All, a student, all of that. Never really been in a situation where I was with people like this, like they would say jaw dropping things. And
Yeah.
I needed to be in that situation so that I could be able to minister to the lowest of the low and the highest of the high. So, I actually wouldn't give that up because of the things that I learned about people. I was living in a little glass case. Not that I was a Christian all my life, but at least for the past 20, 25 years before that, I was in a little Christian bubble with my little Christian friends and my little Christian children and all that. And when the bubble burst, I got to see real life. And
Yeah.
now I can say, I've been to prison. What did they call it? I got street creds.
Yeah.
And I can also talk to the wealthy.
You got plenty of cred, and you got all the letters still behind your name, and you got the doctorate credentials and everything else. So you're way, way, way qualified. I'm super
Testament
excited.
to making sure that I get up. I went to prison. I gave them my CPA license back. They didn't take it. I gave them all of those licenses that I had. I was a certified fraud examiner,
Yeah.
member of the AICPA, the Georgia Society, CPA, all of that. I gave it back to them after the trial, because when they took my friend Joe Bannister to trial the year before, Joe won his case. He had a great lawyers and he had a thinking jury, but the IRS was so angry that they went to the California Board of Accountancy and told them to take Joe's license, and they did, even though he was acquitted. So when I was convicted, I said, "Oh no, you're not taking my license." So I wrote all of them and I sent them their licenses stuff back, and then you can see online that it says that I gave it back as opposed to it being taken from me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I started over. I started, like I say, I started. I hit rock bottom and started to dig actually, but I dug my way back to the surface, and I'm digging my way back to the top.
And it's a hell of a journey, and I'm glad you're giving us a bit of a front row seat. We intend to hang on to this ticket for as long as you let us have it, right?
Yes, that's right.
Shay, what happens next for you? How do people find you? How do people learn about what you're doing? How do people subscribe to your mindset, your thoughts, your teachings, your advice? Where do we go from here?
So my website is down, but sherrypeeljackson.com has my books, and
Okay.
my email is connect@sherrypeeljackson.com.
Okay.
So I do classes, but mostly I do one-on-ones, because when you're talking about people's finances, they don't want to talk freely in a class,
Yeah,
and you
it's
can't reach
private.
them. You're not going to have somebody in a class with 50 people saying I haven't filed tax returns in 3 years.
Right.
So I deal with people one-on-one. I teach people how to write books. I've written 10 books. So I have three clients right now that, well, one, two, yeah, three clients. Two of them have come out with their books. One of them is coming out with a book. I try to help people find multiple streams of income. So the escaping the rat race is what we're doing. Four keys to acquire the life of your dreams. Number one is reduce your expenses. That's the
Okay.
quickest way to have income, is to reduce your expenses. The
Spend
second,
less.
exactly, spend less and you'll have more. Then you eliminate debt. I mean, people don't even know how much debt they're in. They
Yeah.
really. Then increase your income, which is that whole go get a home-based business. I literally go from the beginning, where you don't have a business, all the way up to thriving businesses. People, we talk about what their passions are, and we come up with a home-based business. Like one lady said, "Oh, I love quilting. I want to make quilts." And I said, "Sweetheart, you need to keep that a hobby, because Walmart and Target have quilts." So we had to come up with something else that would be,
Right.
profitable for her. And
Practical.
then after that, after you get the increased income, that's when you build the wealth. And I'm really unconventional when it comes down to investing. I don't invest in anything that can disappear in the blink of an eye. I don't have any IRAs. I don't have any 401ks, no mutual funds, any of that, because it's all controlled. There's a video out there by 60 Minutes. It's on YouTube. 60 Minutes is a 13-minute clip, and it says that, the stock market is rigged, or is the stock market is rigged. One of those, and it's
Right.
rigged. Is somebody telling you that this is rigged? Why would I put my money in 2008, in September 2008, the stock market went down 777.68 points in one day, and Americans lost $10.2 trillion in.
$1 trillion.
Didn't just disappear. It went to the banks that were too big to fail. It went to foreign banks, and it went to all those
Right.
CEOs to have those golden parachutes.
Right.
And they're the ones who jacked everything up. So why are people still investing in something that's rigged? I
Because we
invest.
have short-term memory and we forget all those things and we do it all over again.
It's you're exactly right, Butch, and it's a
Right.
shame. I invest in silver, gold, and real estate. Those are hard assets, something that I can hold in my hand. Physical gold and silver, not those EFTs or whatever you call them, and real estate. And that's where I'm going right now. My magnum opus. I am building a master plan shipping container community on the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. And it's going to be for like-minded people who want a plan B. The Rockefellers and all those people have land and homes all over the world, so that when the excrement hits the portable cooling device in the United States, they will be on a plane to their other places. But we're stuck here. We don't have anywhere to go. Like when Hurricane Katrina hit, everybody knew, everybody and their grandma knew
Sure.
that was coming. But there were people that had the wherewithal to get out and go to their relatives all over the country. And then there were people who were stuck there. And
Right.
I don't want to be stuck there. When I was young, I was a master at musical chairs. I always was able to get a chair. And so I'm telling people the music is about to stop playing. Do you have a chair? So my clients, they're learning these things right now. They're building up their money. They're getting multiple streams of income. They're investing properly in, rural real estate, because you don't want to be in the middle of the town in big cities and in apartment buildings and condos when the excrement hits the portable cooling device. But this is what I teach people all day, every day. So if somebody wants to, become one of my clients, they can get in touch with me at connect@sherrypeeljackson.com.
So
But
just so we didn't miss anything, because we got about less than a minute left, I heard something about a development in Costa Rica,
yes,
and I heard that you have control of as to who comes and plays in this private party of yours. So if we behave ourselves, stay on the front row seat, continue to have you on the show, so we can reach out to more people, educate them in the process. At some point, when we stick it to the IRS and for the rest of the three-letter agencies, we can all come party like rock stars with you in
that's
Costa Rica. Is that what you're saying?
that's exactly right.
I love it. I love it. Dr. Sherry Peel Jackson, you've been extremely gracious, very unfiltered, and extremely loving to both our community and yours. Thank you so much for being that premier leader. We definitely need to have you back on the show. We are going to keep a front row seat. Thank you for being so generous and kind with us today. We look forward to having you again. Wish you tremendous success. Tremendous success. You more than anybody deserve to win, and we want to make sure that happens.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
being
me.
with us today. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.